Hi, and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Carmen McGuinness, and today we're going to talk about those times in life when it's especially difficult to move beyond a person, a situation, or an event. Maybe it's an ex-spouse or lover, a parent who's passed on, a friend or a friend group, or even a job that you've somehow lost, whether you left or whether it left you in some capacity. So, why I can't move on, lessons unlearned is today's topic. So before I begin, just a brief bit about me, so you know who you're hearing if you're not a regular subscriber. I am a board-certified behavior analyst and a health psychologist. Health psychology, behavioral medicine. I'm trained in attachment theory and practice, and I'm an acceptance and commitment therapy trained provider. So, moving on through our topic. So often when one struggles to move beyond something, it's because he or she hasn't processed what lesson or lessons were learned from that thing. And by this, what I mean is that what you learn about yourself through losing someone or something. Often this involves an archetype. So watch yourself if you find you have a label or a persona that you're trying to fulfill in your life. So like hero, savior, victim, those sorts of things. So I'll point these out as I go through the examples that I have today. And as my regular viewers and subscribers know, I like to start with a personal example whenever possible. For me, struggling to move beyond my ex-lover a few years back was a huge challenge. I learned that I really didn't want to be married again. That's what I learned from it. But that's the short story. The slightly longer story is that the idea that I didn't want to be married again started to literally bubble up under the surface, and I mean literally because I got a roaring case of shingles at about the same time that I was realizing this. And so on the surface, I was disappointed that the relationship had ended. We were in a committed relationship, and I'd believed that we were moving in the direction of marriage. And then, in his words, things just fell apart. Well, later, not long after that, he said, and I think it was when he was having second thoughts, he said that I was the one who had broken it off, when all along I'd believed that it had been his decision. So I spent a year really not knowing what the heck happened in that relationship. I was miserable, I was inconsolable, and I was definitely stuck. Then one day I was working with a client who was also stuck and said what I always say in these situations, and that is the question, but what does this mean about you? It's kind of the byline of psychology. It's the question we ask when clients start to go into other things and that archetypical stuff. So later, driving home from my office after that session, I asked myself, why don't you practice what you preach? Physician, heal thyself. So I began to work on me, and what I learned was that maybe, just maybe, I dodged a bullet. Do I even want to be married again, as I said in my opening here? And I recall how miserable I'd been the last several years of my marriage on that drive home. I remembered that. Things started to come up about the marriage in my mind and in my heart, unresolved lessons, unlearned lessons. We're told a fairy tale as young children, and it always involves a royal wedding. And everyone loves a good party, right? Especially when it's a royal party. But does everyone belong in a marriage? I know I did. For a while. We were married for 22 years, and I probably belonged in that marriage for about 15 of them. But did I really want that again? Did I want all of that again? Does everyone have to want someone waiting to get in the shower as soon as they get out because you're making me late? Does everyone want to give up some of their share of the hot water or the clothing budget or the red wine or whatever it is? Does everyone want to listen to someone else's music choice or television show on a volume that they're really not comfortable with? And does everyone have to want all the lights on in the house when what they really prefer is indirect lighting, soft lighting? And maybe it's just a time of life thing. Maybe, maybe I had just got tired of having to live other people's lives. So anyway, I kicked this around for a year or so as I shook loose the last throes of sorrow over the previously mentioned breakup with the guy that I was in a committed relationship with after my divorce. And what I realized was that I was also still grieving from, you guessed it, my marriage. Turns out I had never finished doing that. And I had to go all the way back there to learn that I really don't want to be married again. Sure, I want a royal wedding, but that's just a party anyway. The archetype I had to lose was that of the royal bride, the princess who's married to the prince. So lesson part two of this, because there is more, there usually is. When you start digging around in the psyche, all kinds of stuff can come up. Part two was learned when I told a friend what I'd learned about myself, that, I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been working on me, and I don't want to be married, at least not right now. And her response was, sure, it's easy not to want what you don't have, with the implication that what you can't have. And this brought me to my second lesson, and that is that I really don't like having my reality interpreted for me, which was what my ex-lover had done and what my husband had done for years before. And so the archetype here is the super nice girl who puts up with everyone telling her what to do, how she feels, what she wants and doesn't want. So that's me, or I should say it was me, because I did that work, as I said. So, moving on to some examples, and this is what we'll do for the rest of our time together here, or just about another 5 or 6 minutes, is to throw out some examples from clients. The names have been changed, of course, and I always ask people if I can use them as examples if I change names, and these are all people who answered yes to that. So, the intention of this for you is to get familiar with what I mean here about digging into yourself and asking yourself, what lesson wasn't learned that is preventing me from moving on from this relationship, event, situation. So that you can start to do the work yourself. So here's some examples. So Dee Dee learned that what she thought was mom's memory or ghost or inner mom voice, all words she'd used to describe the voice in her mind telling her that she was making poor choices all the time, was really her own internal moral guide. Once Dee Dee realized that and stopped seeing mom, hearing that nagging mom voice, she started to listen to what she now calls her moral conscience. Today, Dee Dee drinks less, no longer overeats, and has begun making real friends for the first time in her adult life because she's given up her addiction to television. So that's Dee Dee. Sharon. Sharon's lesson was about a parent, her father. Sharon described her relationship with her father as cool. He and her mother were divorced when Sharon, I believe, was about 8 years old. And Dad moved to another city 2 hours drive away shortly after the divorce. Though they spent time together during her childhood, did dad-daughter things like movie dates, concerts, beach vacations. Dad was quite wealthy. And also long talks about politics. They were never close, according to Sharon. When Dad died, Sharon had a very difficult time moving on. For 2 years, she believed that was because she was never really close with her father, and she felt that loss. What she learned when she began to do the work with me was that although Dad wasn't present in her emotional life, her emotional development, which had been more taken up by her mother, he was very present in who she was, what she enjoyed doing, her preferences in food, music, politics, basically her sensibilities. With that understanding, Sharon was able to move on, recognizing how her dad had always been in her life and always did and still did influence her. The archetype that Sharon had to lose was a kind of a Hallmark Father's Day card version of the daddy-daughter relationship. So moving on, we have Donna. Donna, who referred to herself as his mistress when she came to me, learned that she chooses emotionally unavailable partners because she herself chooses to remain, or I should say maintain, some emotional unavailability. She wants to be close, but not too close, in her own words. Donna's father had had 2 long relationships with mistresses during her childhood, and Donna believed that what she learned from that was that it's the mistress who gets the attention. It's the mistress that has the amazing life. So what she learned as a mistress herself, however, was that was not necessarily true. Today, she's in a committed relationship with a single partner. And the archetype that she had to lose was that of the sexy, happy, cherished mistress right out of sort of a 1960s Rock Hudson movie. I don't remember the name of the movie, but something about See You in September, that might have been it. Anyway, in relationships and social settings, this is our next example, Jill only felt comfortable in chaos. Those were her words. Although her home and office were immaculate, well-organized, clean, neat, she really liked her social world to be kind of a mess. As we began our work, Jill confessed that her close friends often told her that her behavior doesn't match who she is. Others didn't see her the way she did, and the rest of our work sort of centered around that. She thought she was being flirty and fun-loving, while the feedback that she got from her close friends was that she was asking for trouble and occasionally bordering on trashy. So together, Jill and I learned that she hadn't formed a strong sense of self in her developing years. We explored what she wants to be like rather than who she thought she was. And with my help, she developed some labels that she now uses to describe herself and to bracket herself and her behavior. If she falls out of those labels, she pulls herself back in again. We also sorted out the subtle and not so subtle differences between chaos and adventure, which it turns out is what she really likes, not chaos. The archetype Jill ditched was that of the carefree party girl. So last example, very last one, Martha's husband died on her 49th birthday. He'd been ill with cancer for many years, I think like 6 years. So 5 years later, Martha was still miserable. She dated occasionally, but really hadn't been able to move on. She described herself as dead inside. As we began our work, it was revealed that Martha's father had died when she was a baby. Our work together centered around Martha's mother's portrayal of the victim whose husband had died. That was the part that Martha's mother had played throughout Martha's childhood. Martha was never permitted to grieve for her father because, as her mother said, "You were just a baby. What do you know?" Pain and victimization were reserved for Martha's mom. Martha's mom and Martha's mom alone got to be the victim in that family, until Martha lost her own husband many years later. Together, Martha and I got rid of that archetypical victim thing that she had inherited from Mom, and completed the work of grieving not only for Martha's husband, but also for Martha's father, something she had never been allowed to do as a girl. So there are some examples for you today. So what I hope you can get out of this is, how do you work on you? Or if you're working with someone else, if you're another therapist or just have a friend who needs this sort of work, how do you do this? How do you step into that kind of light about yourself? It always falls back to the question, what does this mean about me? And also, as I mentioned, watch those archetypes. Ask yourself, what am I being here? One I didn't address today, and I've had many clients like this, at least as many as I mentioned here today, who see themselves as the superhero, that Christ complex thing. There's a lot of that going around today, and it seems like just recently there are a lot of people who are really wanting to shake loose out of that skin, dump that cape, burn that cape. You don't have to be the superhero. So I would invite you to consider that one as well. You don't have to rescue everyone. So I hope this has been helpful, and as always, I will invite you to contact me if you feel like you need more help than what you get on the internet. There are a lot of us out here providing these kinds of videos, but I also do work out of a Central Florida-based clinic, my own clinic, and I work on the internet on a HIPAA-secure platform as well. So if you feel that you need more help, please reach out and call me. We'll talk. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful holiday season. Take care and see you next Sunday.